So you may have a notification pop up that it is being recorded. As we're going through today, feel free to utilize the chat. We have a team of folks online that are going to monitor the chat here to make sure we're capturing everybody's comments and questions, and trying to make this as a meaningful experience as possible. My name is Jason Key, so I'm excited to be with you today. I am a people person, so part of what we're going to be talking about today is my shared experiences, my observations of working with a lot of folks over the years. And we're also joined by Dan Day, which is one of the best people I've had the pleasure to work with. Dan?
Thanks, Jason. Happy to ride along and answer any questions that you all want to put in the chat today.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. All right, just to kind of warm us up and use the chat, was wondering if you'd be willing to share a couple of things within the chat that will help us meet your needs, make this worth your time. First, where are you logging in from? It's always fun to see where people are joining us from around the world. And second, why did you sign up for today's webinar? Why did you sign up for today's webinar? We'll give it a minute or so for some answers to get populated in there, and then we will move on. We have Malaysia, California, Urbandale, Iowa. Hi, Michelle. Wyoming, Calgary, Switzerland. Not so sunny Florida. It's sunny in Iowa. Dan, we've got people from all over the place.
From Malaysia to California and everywhere in between, it looks like.
Yeah. I love Jackie's comment, not a people person, but wants to learn a bit more. There's certainly benefit to that as well. Excellent. Keep them coming. Excellent. Keep them coming. And as I noted, if you have questions or comments as we go, Dan's monitoring the chat, and we will pause every now and then. Michelle shares interested in learning more about blind spot that people have when it comes to working with others who may not be as extroverted as outgoing. Awesome. I am a people person. Tell me why I'm the problem. What my problem is. Oh, believe me, we will, Rachel. I'm just kidding. All right. So let's address the elephant in the room, the problem here. There are a lot of fantastic things about people. We're naturally curious about other people. We're natural collaborators. We care. We empathize. We express emotion towards others. And all that is great. Those are strengths that will help us maximize relationships, develop, nurture relationships, and will help us succeed in whatever it is we're trying to do. However, as Michelle noted, we have some blind spots here. And it's my observation, not only from my journey of working in the social intelligence game and studying it the past 20 years, and trying to walk my talk, but also working with a lot of folks through training, coaching, different capacities. We definitely have some blind spots. And my observation of it is that we can be a little finicky when we're learning about the blind spots. The messenger matters. How the message is shared with us matters. And we can ride this wave of being this people person. And if you go on LinkedIn, that's sometimes the first thing people say. I'm a people person. And it's wonderful. But along with the people person stuff comes with an opportunity for distractions, for hurt feelings, taking things personally, not focusing on results like we could, things of that nature. And those are all things that can slow us down, hold us back, or worse, sabotage our success. So we want to support you with that today. I saw this meme today. I thought it was relevant. If you don't separate yourself from your distractions will separate you from your goals and the life you want. It's very easy for people to be distracted by relationship dynamics. And we may not even realize the role we play in it. And we may not even realize what we can do to soften that or move through that. We can kind of have this narrative in our head that we validate that doesn't serve us at all. So that's what we want to explore. So today's talk track, we're going to talk about how we tend to work and communicate. We're going to explore our needs, preferences, and stressors. We have strengths and weaknesses, so let's learn about them. And we're going to wrap up by talking about 6 key growth opportunities I think people have that we're not taught, that if we do learn them, we tend to learn them the hard way. And hopefully we can shortcut this learning opportunity to move through them in the spirit of versatility and resiliency, which is what we want to support everybody in doing. That's actually a purpose of Tracon groups, is to help people become more versatile and resilient. So when we're talking about versatility and resilient, let's kind of set the stage and begin with the end in mind here, okay? How we describe versatility, we actually measure it in some of our programs, but how we describe versatility, it's the consistency in adapting and modifying your behavior and communication to the needs of the interaction or situation, okay? So imagine we're in the midst of interactions, we enter meetings and situations, and we're able to observe behavior, we're able to observe what's actually happening, and we're able to understand the needs, and we're able to do things that align with that. That is what versatility is. It's a predictor of success. Now, when we talk about meeting needs, this is not bending over backwards, people pleasing, compromising your values. This is a strategic approach to get more done to achieve greater success with versatility. Resilience is another thing that we measure. And resilience is about navigating the challenges of life, personally and professionally, with the greatest effectiveness, coming out with our health intact, our mental emotional stability intact, and actually relying on skills that are effective. Okay. So versatility and resilient are really big deals. I have 2 children. I kind of had the idea that if we can support our young people and everybody else around you in being versatile and resilient, they're going to do fine. So that's our goal with you. So to kind of set the stage, let's talk about 2 types of people in the workplace. Of course, we can slice and dice this further, but we're going to focus on these 2 types. One type is the task people, and the other type are the people. This is a common distinction we talk about in the workplace, but in my experience, outside of the space we're in here, we talk about it, we just don't do much about it. We don't learn about it more. We don't try to teach one side about the other. And there's a lot of value in understanding this differently. So we have tendencies, behavioral tendencies. Task people, their tendencies are focused on task. People, their tendencies tend to be focused on people. And the reality is 90% of our thought, behavior, and communication patterns are automatic. These happen without any active thinking. This is our subconscious, okay? These are our productive or unproductive behavioral tendencies. These are our productive and unproductive habits. These are our biases. These are our needs. These are our stress responses. And they happen without us having to be engaged with them. Part of the lesson here, and what we are going to probably repeat, is that we need to be engaged in our 90%. Some examples of 90% that you are likely familiar with. Have you ever driven anywhere, and when you got to your destination, you did not remember the drive? Right? That's our brain making things easy. Our brain is saying, we've got this, we've done this before. We're fairly certain on what's going to happen next, and it takes over. What about the last time you tied your shoe? Did you really think about it? And that's a complex process. Try to give somebody else verbal directions on tying their shoe. But we do it without even thinking. I heard this great example the other day. Whatever your dominant hand is that you write your signature, start signing it with your other hand. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel goofy because you're not operating from an automatic place. Well, taking it further with bigger implications, our behavior is automatic, our needs are automatic, our stressors are automatic, how we communicate are automatic, and we have got to disrupt the 90% if we're going to make meaningful change. So one of the ways we do this with our clients, and we want to do this with you, is let's talk about the brain. So our brain has two operating systems, a fast system and a slow system, and they operate differently. Our fast system is our 90%. It's our automatic thinking. It's happening without our active engagement. And you can see the bullet points right here, what it's trying to do. It's about quick and easy solutions. It's about saving time, preserving energy so we can live another day. We can protect ourselves. We can survive. It's our default system. And you can see the second bullet point, it's often irrational and wrong. Okay. Our slow system, just as it says, slow and deliberate. It's logical, it's intentional, it takes our involvement. It takes more time, it uses more energy. For those of us that might be a little impatient, pausing and thinking through things may be a little bit of a challenge, right? But there is value in that. It uses more energy, and we can overwrite the default system by being involved in it. Now, the irony with our fast system and our 90%, the goal of our fast system is to help us experience comfort right now. So we navigate in the world and we're constantly scanning for threats and dangers. And what the research shows, most of our threats and dangers that we perceive today are psychological, and they're in our head. And what comes out of our resilience program is 91% of the things we worry about never happen. And the things that actually do happen are not as severe or dramatic as we imagine them to be. So we do a heck of a job at keeping ourselves in stress mode. Okay. But then the purpose of that is to help us feel comfortable right now. The irony is our effort to feel comfortable right now may make our lives harder in the long run. Thomas, I saw in the chat, Dan, the difference between reacting and responding. Yeah, I've heard it framed like that. We're going to react if we're not thinking about it. Can we choose how we respond? But it all starts with our brain. Going into this a little deeper around tendencies. So our social style program, we actually measure these things and help individuals and teams and organizations understand this. And we refer to it as how we can observe it through behavior. So from an observable behavior standpoint, task people tend to be more controlled with their emotions. From an observable behavior perspective, people tend to be more emoting. So we people, we tend to show more emotion. We tend to use more emotion. So let's look how they're different from each other. Because part of us working through our stuff, succeeding, maximizing our strengths, and closing the gap on our blind spots is also understanding how we interact with other people. So I'll kind of go through these. Task people tend to show emotions less often. And this right here is a huge differentiator. Us people, we depend on facial expression. We depend on tone of voice. We depend on reading body language to tell us how the relationship is. So if somebody doesn't show emotion, we could instantly be confused and go to worst case scenario. That's an opportunity for us. Task-oriented, people-oriented. We tend to be more animated. They're just not as animated. They tend to be more formal, a little more rigid. We tend to be more casual, less formal. And they're less involved with others, and we are more involved with others. And if we ended our time today and you just focused on this moving forward, the trajectory of your relationships would change. But let's keep going. We work differently. And this is like a big surprise when we're working with each other. So task people, how they tend to work, they go from point A to point Z and they go in a straight line. They're focused on the task. They're focused on getting the job done. Now, they may do it at a different pace, but they're pretty much going in a straight line. Us people, we do things different. And we want the task people to understand that about us, but we need to understand that about us so we can manage it. Here's how we tend to do things. We do not go in a straight line. And all the weaving and looping, what that is relationship building, relationship nurturing. It could be distractions from relationships. That is our people orientation. We're focused on the result. We're focused on getting the job done, just like the task focused people. But the relationships and our interactions play a big role in that. Both sides have their advantages and their disadvantages. What we need to do is learn about this by each other. If us people can learn this about task people, it will give us freedom because we'll stop wondering why they communicate the way they do, give feedback the way they do. We can manage our feelings about it as they do it. Some more about the task focused people. They're focused on the task. They're likely to prioritize the task over relationships. Now, this doesn't mean they don't have fantastic relationships, but when it's time to get the job done, they're getting the job done. Their needs tend not to be relational. So they don't need a lot of the people stuff. They don't need approval or support or feel connection to feel good about who they are and what they're doing. So what that means is our efforts to do that stuff may not be received the way we want them to. Important for us to know. And their behavior and communication tends not to be relational. We can stop being surprised when we don't get the relational stuff from task people. It's just how it is. And that's okay. Us people. We're focused on relationships while completing the task. That's the wavy line in the looping. We may prioritize relationships over tasks. So that could be distractions. That could be if we have to deliver news or feedback that may impact the relationship. We may hesitate or it may cause us stress in the process. Our needs tend to be relational. We need approval. We need support. We need to feel connection, feel good about who we are and what we're doing. When we have that, it fills our bucket and energizes us. And as a result, our behavior and communication tends to be relational as well. So this is good information for a task-focused person. We're building relationships. It's really important for us. But here's what tends to happen. Task people get annoyed because they perceive us as lacking focus and objectivity. Because we're zigzagging, we're weaving, we're talking, we're socializing, we're reacting. And we take things personally, and we feel, that's a big thing. We feel disrespected. We don't feel the people stuff, and we perceive a lack of kindness and connection. Well, how many interactions do any of us have to have with another person before this becomes our rule for them in our mind, and we're probably inaccurate with it? Michelle, the slides will be available we'll share the recording of the presentation. The actual slides will not be, but we will be sharing the presentation. So let's dig a little further into this. Why people behave the way they do. Because the first step in us managing our stuff is understanding why we behave the way we do and understanding about others. Well, the first rule is we all have needs. We all have needs. Our needs tend to be relational. The people stuff matters to us. For example, task-focused folks, their needs tend not to be relational. The relational stuff is not as important. But here's a general rule. When our needs are met, we tend to be more secure, comfortable, confident, and focused. We want to meet needs. We want to learn about our needs. We want to learn about others' needs. When our needs are not met, it raises our tension. It will create stress and insecurity, and that will distract us as we're pursuing the objective. So can we learn about this? Can we learn about our relationship with stress? What causes us stress? Can we learn to be a little more objective? And can we manage the potential distractions when we start to experience that? Because our needs will drive our behavior and communication. If our needs aren't met, it's going to drive our behavior and our communication in an insecure, stressed out fashion. Likely won't result well. When our needs are met, we're going to behave in a more, again, secure, comfortable, confident way. We're going to be more focused. Really important for us to understand this. So let's go back to, we're going to focus, I know we've been talking about task people and people. We're going to focus primarily on people. Okay. So just a reminder on how we tend to show up from a behavioral standpoint. We show more emotion, we're more people oriented. We tend to be more animated, more casual, more involved with others. We like being around others. Okay. And as I mentioned, our program Social Style measures this. We help individuals, organizations, teams understand this dynamic with them. but we take it a step further through the measurement, and we also measure measurement that we refer to as assertiveness. Now, we're not going to get deep into assertiveness in this webinar, but I at least want to acknowledge it. So we have our people who make up about 50% of the general population. And within us people, we have varying behavioral patterns. We have people that tend to be more ask assertive, and these are people who are interested in and prefer information and structure as they're navigating. Okay. So they like to have the information so they can make the right decision. They like things to be predictable. They want to know what's going to happen next. They're going to ask a lot of questions, may need some reassurance. They're risk adverse. They just want to make sure what they're doing is correct. Then we have people that tend to be more tele-assertive, and they're interested in action and outcomes, moving things forward. Okay. So they may move a little quicker. They may not pay as much attention to details and processes. They may not be as interested in the rules. They're not going to love your micromanagement. Okay. Because we want to get things moving and we want to move forward with it. We describe these folks, the people who tend to be more ask assertive, we describe them as amiable styles, and the tell assertive folks that are people we describe as expressives. And they each have their needs are relational and their behavior tends to be relational, but their needs are different. So with amiable style folks, their needs are personal security. So what this means is predictability, consistency with their environment, with their relationships. They prefer harmony, people being on the same page, people getting along. Their orientation is to develop relationships. Okay. They connect with people. They get to know people. They get to understand people. They know your strengths and weaknesses, and they try to add value to that. They know what causes you stress and what excites you. And sometimes they make it their role to help you navigate that and protect you from the stresses. They are the best relationship builders on the planet. There are a lot of wonderful strengths that come with that. However, there are some challenges that come with this, because they may get in a mode of preserving relationships so much that they prioritize other people's needs ahead of their own, because they don't want to disrupt the relationship. They don't want to say the thing that might upset somebody. They don't want to have somebody miss out on something. So they may prioritize others' needs over theirs. So their growth action is to initiate, because you have to go after what you want. You have to express your emotions when you're feeling it. You have to draw a boundary when it needs to be drawn. There are things you have to do to get what you want that may be uncomfortable, and that can be a little challenging for an amiable style. Now, I tend to be more expressive. Dan tends to be more amiable. Dan, what's your take on this being an amiable style people person?
There have been times in interactions where I've finished up a conversation and have been done with it, and then we'll follow up with that person and say, oh, I'm sorry if I mentioned this, or I came across forcefully here, or I didn't mean to, whatever. And invariably I get the message back, oh, I didn't even notice, or don't worry about it. And so it reminds me often that as an amiable, I might be thinking I'm coming across more forcibly than I actually am. And so and to initiate my will is something that always is, have that in the back of my mind, that I need to make my voice heard if I want other people to, if I want to contribute, right? So it's a good reminder that as amiables, that there are times when we might feel like we're being forceful, and maybe we're not so much, considering the other styles and their needs.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's all valuable stuff to understand and reflect on, and and we learn from this. So super valuable. I tend to be more expressive. Our needs are also relational. Our behavior and communication also tends to be relational, but it's different than the amiable style, and it's important. Where amiable style are genuinely about the good of other people, the good of the group. They want everybody to be on the same page and experience success and get what they need. Expressives are not as concerned about the group. We're more concerned about, well, us. We get excited about things and we get fired up, and we want to do things, and we want people to support us. So it's our relational needs and behaviors are not as much about the good of the group as it is about, I'm super excited about this. I want you on my side. Let's do this together. Okay. So the need is personal approval. And here's the deal, when I first heard that and come to terms with that, I didn't love it. I want to be the people person that adds value to everybody. Eh, Not always, not always. Okay. But our need is personal approval. And what that means is we want support and partnership and approval for our ideas and our work. How we do this, we tend to be pretty darn spontaneous. And all this means is we kind of keep things open for how we're going to do it. We don't get restricted by rules and processes. Um, we don't want a lot of rigidity and formality. Now, sometimes we need it. We just don't love it. That's that spontaneity. We can be excitable and impulsive with how we do things. We're willing to take risks that may be unnecessary. So all those things can be wildly productive when we need to be creative and adaptable and respond to something last second, and we need someone to take charge and energize people. All great things. However, there are also some liabilities with this. The growth action is to check. And I use a phrase, I think Ice Cube said it best. He said, you better check yourself or you will wreck yourself. And what that means for an expressive style, it's around emotional awareness and emotional management, because we tend to express our emotions more. Where the amiable style will feel them just like we will, they may not express them as much. We are going to express them. We're happy, we're excited, we're expressing, we're frustrated, we're not excited, we have a problem with you, we may express them. And that can get us into trouble. That cannot advance what we're trying to do. So the growth action is to check ourselves, and it really is check our emotions. How are we saying things? How are we doing things? Is it appropriate for the situation? Is it appropriate for the dynamic? Push pause, walk away from the computer, go for a walk, get away. Don't type, don't hit send, because we can, in a very spontaneous, expressive nature, energize people and also make people feel not great about what's going on here. So that's our opportunity as a people person. Again, both the amiable and expressive styles, we're both people. Our needs are both relational. Our behavior and communication tends to be relational as well. If we have needs, we've got stressors, and that's what happens when our needs are not being met. So just to kind of touch on these stressors, when we look at the amiable style, um, and their need for personal security, if we understand our needs, we can have a better understanding on what is going to cause us stress, and we can manage that stuff. And likewise, in the spirit of versatility, if we can understand other people's needs, we're gonna know what stresses them out. So for an amiable style, their need is personal security. They're people who prefer information and structure. These are some things that may cause the amiable style stress. Dan, how do you signed off on these, right? You're on board with this. How do you manage these?
Really what it's self-control, right? And understanding what backup behavior is all about, which is I might, if I don't use a more conscious effort, a lot of our behaviors, as you mentioned, is our subconscious. And so I need to make a conscious decision to say, okay, decisions are being made more quickly than I'm comfortable with. What are some of the things that I need to do? And it goes back to my growth action, which, okay, I need to make my voice heard, make people understand that I'm feeling this. Otherwise, as amiables, we have that propensity to just kind of lay back, acquiesce, we call it, which is just giving in. I call it the whatever behavior. Okay, whatever. I'm not gonna fight this battle at this point in time. I'm gonna let it slide, and that's to the benefit of no one. So it's that self-awareness to begin with, and then understanding how your behaviors are being exhibited to other people, regardless of what I'm thinking or feeling. They need to see it and hear it in my behaviors.
Yeah, definitely. So as an expressive style person, our needs are personal approval. We get excited about things. We want people to have our back, support us. And what happens when we don't feel that? But these are some things that are going to cause us stress: not feeling heard, not being listened to. If our work is being criticized, if things are moving too slow, we're excited and we've got somebody slowing us down or asking us questions. Those darn facts. a lack of flexibility. We want to be able to shake and move and be creative and do our thing. So these are some things that will cause us stress. And what jumps out for me with this, I think as Dan shared some great feedback on managing it from an amiable style, it is our nature to take things personally. And as a result, it's my nature or our nature as more expressive people that when we take things personally, we're going to respond outwardly. Okay. Where again, the amiable style, they may feel something, they may not express it. We're likely to express it, and we need to manage that. So that's the big thing here. And when it comes to the stressors, there's a narrative around like, let's call it what it is. We have feelings, and our feelings get hurt. Okay. Part of the reason why we navigate the world and building relationships the way we do and communicate and collaborate the way we do is because it's this unspoken expectation that if we're nice to you, you're going to be nice to me. If I collaborate with you, you're going to collaborate with me. Well, it's just not that simple. And when we people don't get that in return, it hurts our feelings. And then what happens next from there? We go into a backup behavior, and this is our stress response. It's within our behavior pattern, and it's an exaggerated form of our behavior to protect ourselves, to reduce our tension, to find comfort. And there's irony with this as well, because some of it doesn't seem like it should create comfort. But Dan alluded to acquiescing. What did you call it, Dan? The whatever response,
Yes.
right? So the amiable style, if they start to experience a stressor, then they're likely to just go along with it, even if they disagree with it. And they may even smile and tell you everything is cool. And you may ask for feedback and ask them what's wrong, and they're going to tell you everything's fine. Okay. But they're going to find their people that give them security, and they're going to share. Okay. So we want to pay attention to this when you, and Dan, challenge me if you disagree. I think part of the reason for understanding our backup behavior is that can be the little alert that goes off when we feel ourselves going into there. And I think you said that, like, when you start to maybe backpedal, when you want to say something and you find that you're not, that's really when you need to step into it. Is that
Right.
accurate? Yeah.
It is. And there are ways that we can prevent it from happening or overcoming it when it does happen. We just need to first be aware of it, that we possibly can go there.
Yep. And for an expressive style, ours is a little more expressive, a lot more expressive. It's verbal, it's emotional. It'll start with defensiveness. And if that's not getting the job done, we may just full out and confront the issue, confront the person, challenge. Depending on how personally we're taking it, we may come out and personally attack. This is not a recipe for success. I had a CEO back in the day that would describe these as career limiting moves. So an expressive style's failure to check ourselves, and if we go into backup behavior, it could be a career limiting move. Now, all styles have this to a certain degree. It is a bigger risk for an expressive style because of how it comes out. And when I train, I give example after example of an expressive style having a bad 15 seconds in a manager meeting that you could just see after it. They just kind of spiraled until they were out of the organization. So this is real risks. As Dan has said, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat. So let's get to the strengths and weaknesses of us people. Strengths. We're people oriented. We have an interest in people. We show interest in people. We make people, hopefully we make people feel comfortable by our effort to relate and connect and build relationship. We're empathetic with others, right? From the time we've been little, we've been, again, reading people's eye contact. We've been listening to tone of voice. We've been paying attention to when people are happy or not, or when they're struggling. And it's easy for us to show compassion, sympathy, empathy. Now we're going to talk about empathy in a bit here and why we need to manage that as well. We're natural collaborators. We want to be around people. We may collaborate too much, right? We may get stuck in the collaboration. We may start meetings off collaborating when like agenda needs to be done, and we're definitely responsive to others, some of our weaknesses. And I think if we can figure out number one, it will positively affect everything else. What is our tendency to take things personally? What is our tendency to take things personally? So what that looks like is we experience something and we read into it and we assign some intent to it against us. And that's like a snowball going down the hill. It just gets bigger. And we may not listen to a darn thing anybody else says otherwise. If we have taken something personally, we made that decision that people are bad. What are your goals? What are your objectives? What do you want out of your life? Our relationship stressors could distract us from those things. We may get too stuck in our feelings and not be objective and focus on facts, which can really hurt our credibility with people. We may be too informal and casual with how we communicate and how we do things. Sometimes you need to button it up and get focused and get things done. These are all tendencies on a scale, right? This is a risk at the worst. So this leads us to 6 key growth opportunities for people. 6 key growth opportunities for people. So I put this list together out of experiences in my growth, but also my observations and talking to people and getting feedback from Dan and other members on the Tracom team to make sure we're supporting people. So the 6 things we're going to talk about avoiding the judgment trap. This is a delicate dance that once we fall in it, we may not get out of it. And while we're in it, we may keep on validating this judgment that we have that just may not be accurate and may not be serving us. It's likely hurting our relationships. We're going to talk about setting realistic expectations, emotional awareness and management, the appropriate amount of empathy or appropriate empathy, setting and respecting boundaries, and attachment style awareness. Okay. So learning is right time, right place. Okay, so you could hear the same message 100 times, and maybe one time it hits at the right time, and you're like, oh my gosh. Okay, so we're not going to solve all the world's problems in the next 20 minutes. But let this be an introduction to start the conversation. Let this be an introduction to get to know ourselves better and have some safeguards up to learn more about this stuff. I mean, shoot, we live in the information age. Information is at our fingertips. If we know what to look for, it's there. And us folks, us at Tracom are here to support you the best we can. So avoiding the judgment trap, we go back to the brain systems, the fast and the slow system. Here's how it tends to happen when we meet people and interact with people. We meet people, we experience somebody, and they're behaving in a certain way. Okay. And we either like it or we don't. We're either comfortable or we're not. And depending on our comfort level, we're going to assign positive or negative traits to them. And we're going to make judgments about that person. Okay. So we meet people, something makes us feel uncomfortable. They're a bad person. They're whatever words we want to use. And that becomes the narrative we have about those people. We give a lot of credit and blame to people for how we feel. We need to take that control back and start to understand people. We need to engage our slow system. So when we experience somebody, we want to observe how they're behaving and communicating. What we learn through social style and other like programs, that if we're willing to observe, that will tell us how to work with them. We want to consider their needs. We all have needs. When needs are met, we're more comfortable, confident, focused. When our needs are not met, we're going to be stressed. They're going to be stressed. And we want to adjust our behavior to meet the needs in their communication, or to adjust our behavior and communication to meet their needs. And this can really force us to adjust our thoughts about people, especially if we have positive or negative history with people, kind of resetting things, leading us to setting realistic expectations here. I saw this in a meme yesterday, and I kind of laughed at it. I said, this is perfect. My problem is I expect me out of people. And this is what we do as people. We expect everybody to be like us, and it's absolutely baffling to us that people are not caring and courteous and thoughtful and think about other people and want to help and da 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 da. We need to reset our expectations with this. When we start to get into this stuff, we have people that are more task on the top, people that are more emoting on the bottom. We looked at this slide earlier. When we start to learn about these things, we can reset our expectations for other people. We can stop being surprised when people behave a certain way and it impacts a certain way. This is freedom. You want to talk about managing your stuff and moving forward productively. When you work with someone that's more task focused and you have realistic expectations that they're probably not going to use a lot of emoting relational words with you, that they may be a little more direct and rigid, cool. Interact with them, meet their need, and move on. We can stop getting worried about the lack of eye contact or the tone of voice or whatever it is, right? This is freedom. It will change how we work with people. And also, pay attention to us relational emoting folks as well, because there's a reason others behave the way they do as well. Next one is emotional awareness and management. So a few years ago, I went to the doctor for my annual physical, and I love my doctor, and he's like, "How you doing? How have things been? How's your mental and emotional?" Well, I can't get out of this social intelligence world, so my response, I'm like, "Well, I know I tend to be more emotional, so I'm just trying to figure that game out." And he drew this, what I'm going to show you, he drew this for me on a sheet of paper, and it blew my mind, and it helped me explore my emotions, manage my emotions. So what he basically said to me, he said, everybody has emotional capacity, okay? Highs and lows. And our emotional capacity for our positive and negative emotions. And he said some people, their range of emotional capacity is limited. Okay. So they may not feel as much, they may not have to manage as much, they may not express as much, etc. But that's not everybody. You could have some people, as I'm going backwards here, let me go forward. You can have some people who has greater emotional capacity. The highs are higher, the lows are lower. And in between is a bunch of thoughts and emotions and expectations and self dialogue and traits and judgments that we have to manage and sort out. Well, I would imagine the more there are, the harder it is to manage, which may be why we tend to be a little more emoting if we're feeling more stuff. Look at my hands. I'm about to go through my camera here. And then we have people that have wide range of emotions. They're feeling all the stuff. The highs are high, the lows are lows. I think we want to learn about this so we can admit it to ourselves wherever we are and explore it. Give ourselves some grace, cut ourselves some slack. It is what it is. How is it serving or taken away from the results we are trying to accomplish? I can tell you my journey of it, and Dan, chime in if you've experienced this as well. Um, my highs were high when I was younger. I get fired up, passionate, excitable, and it served me in a lot of ways. But I can tell you, I had moments when my lows were lows, when I felt like a failure, when I worried about what people were thinking or saying. That as I've worked on managing the lows, they're not as low. Now, as a result, the highs don't get as high, but I think that's kind of the goal. We want a little more stability in that. So I was grateful for learning this. Dan, any thoughts on this?
Not other than the fact that we could spend an entire webinar and then some on this concept. I think the key takeaway is that we all experience and go through these emotions differently at different levels and different times in our lives and have different variances. And that's the important thing here, right? Is that there are differences among people.
Yep, absolutely. All right, the next one is appropriate empathy. So if you Google ZDogg MD and empathy kills, this guy right here, he goes by ZDogg MD from a branding perspective. He's been video blogging since like pre 2010, so he's old school. And he is an advocate for health doctors and healthcare workers. Okay. But he has an 11-minute video where he goes through a study from the University of Pennsylvania about empathy. So I saw this headline, empathy kills. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Because I am preaching empathy to everybody. And this definitely changed my paradigm around this. So he outlines that there's three types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, there's emotional empathy, and there's compassionate empathy. Let's talk about cognitive empathy. Is from a cognitive perspective, you understand that people experience different things, but you don't necessarily have an emotional attachment or emotional reaction to it. It just doesn't provoke emotion within you. Okay. So you can understand that people experience different things, and as a result, you can acknowledge it because you know that's a good thing to do. It's good for relationship building, building trust, all that. You're a decent human being, so you want to let people know you care, but you're not necessarily feeling it. So this is one type of empathy. It can also be used for manipulation. That if manipulative people, they don't feel like they don't feel the emotional connection to somebody's challenge or suffering, they could use it kind of like playing chess to get what they want out of it. So that could be a negative effect of it. But nonetheless, that's one of the empathies that they talk about. Emotional empathy is the risk that I think we have as people. And what emotional empathy is, it's where we become emotionally involved in other people's suffering. We want to help, we want to support, we want to save, we want to fix, we want to inspire. And we assume their stress. So it literally physiologically causes us stress. And what he talks about in the video is that we make their suffering and their stress more our mission and concern than it is their concern. So we're getting worked up, we're connected to it, we're likely letting it inconvenience our lives, certainly changing how we're thinking about things. And they're not even as concerned about it, right? So it's all really for nothing. So we have to be able to create a boundary, not get emotionally involved in everybody's stuff, and not getting sucked into it to where it becomes our mission more than theirs. Lots of research and from our resilience program to actually stress. Stress is killing us. It is shortening our life. It's polluting our body. It's making us more susceptible to chronic disease. And Lord knows there's enough stress in the world. We don't need to be inviting it by trying to save everybody and assuming other people's stress. What we want to do is show compassion, and they call it compassionate empathy. This is where we care without becoming emotionally involved. We feel it, but we care without becoming emotionally involved. We are not going to assume their stress. We're not going to let it stress us out. And as a result, we're able to support them in a way that has boundaries, but that's actually effective. That's actually effective for them, and we're not getting in their business and assuming stuff for ours. So compassionate empathy is the way to go. Again, if you go to if you Google ZDoggMD, empathy kills, this video will pop up. It's about 11 and a half minutes long. He's an entertaining guy, so you'll be engaged as you go through that as well. The next one, setting and respecting boundaries. Let's pull up our social style stuff as well. Although both styles need to set and respect boundaries, the amiable style, for example, they may be more in a position where they need to set boundaries because they may not advocate for themselves. They may assume too much of other people's stuff. They may feel disrespect. They may not like the way people are communicating with them or what's being done. And if people don't know, they're going to keep doing it. So in the spirit of initiating and not acquiescing, you got to set boundaries. You got to let people know. You have to protect yourself from other people's stuff. Because as someone that's more teleassertive, if I don't know it's a problem, I'm just going to keep doing it. And sometimes I need to be thumped in the nose to be told to slow down and back off. Okay. But amiable style people, setting boundaries is a really big deal. You are protecting your peace when you do that. Expressive style folks, we may be more in the camp of needing to respect boundaries. Because when we get fired up and when we get excited, we may overwhelm. We may push, we may direct, we may challenge, and we may think we're just trying to advocating, get people on board. Probably not happening. We're probably invading their space, invading their boundaries, not serving our purpose. It also goes the same when we get frustrated or upset, we have a tendency to overwhelm people because we're going to use a lot of words, we're going to use a lot of emotions, and especially if it's them that is the cause of our stress, we're coming right at them. Okay. So in both cases, we want to set boundaries to protect our peace, and we need to respect other people's boundaries because us emoting folks may get all in the mix of other people's stuff because we think we're helping or because we're excited in pushing them. But boundaries are a really big deal. And then finally, I want to touch on attachment styles and job performance. Now, this is getting a little deeper into the psychology, social psychology space here. I'm showing the information here. I am not suggesting we people, or task people are any one of these. This is not a diagnosis or personality assumption, okay? This is an awareness thing. So we have 4 different attachment styles. And attachment styles, what they say about attachment styles, this is how we learned to develop and maintain relationships with other people, likely in relationship to our relationship with our parents and caregivers. So if we were in a healthy home where there was attention and accountability and appropriate love, and we had the ability to express ourselves in a healthy way, we're likely going to be more secure. And that makes about 50% of the population. Anxious attachment, and you can see there's a particular focus on people here. Struggle with self-esteem, fear of rejection, things of that nature, worrying about what people think. Lack of stability in the home, likely a lack of emotional stability from our parents or caregivers, highs and lows. So we tend to be a little more, it can be anxious around other people and worry about relationships and things like that. About 20% of the population. Avoidant attachment, if our caregivers were not very emotional, or if emotions were not allowed or encouraged, we may have learned to be more independent and self-sufficient and not open ourselves up as much. So that can affect how we do things and build relationships. And then the disorganized, 1 to 5% of the population, it's a bigger mix of these, okay? Why I wanted to add this here is I read this in another resource a few years ago, and as I was doing research for this to validate this, I found that they talk about it in this book as well, Anxiously Attached, that states that anxious attachment people are the lowest wage earners in America. Now, at my worst, I think I can fall into some anxious attachment patterns. So it was a big smack across my face. So my inability to manage this stuff is going to affect how much money I make. Well, you start to go through the behavioral styles. If we're constantly distracted by relationships, if we're constantly in conflict or worrying about dynamics with other people, how are we going to focus on what we're doing? How are we going to accomplish our goals, fulfill our purpose, right? We're going to be distracted, in alignment with this as well. So I'm not suggesting that us people are anxious or avoidant or secure, but if you can relate to this at all, it's worth looking more into. And if you need help, get help, right? I found support from a local coach in town. I read 2 or 3 books on attachment styles. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is me. And it really helped me navigate that to get out of this space. But we may be in this cycle and not even realize it. And it feels meaningful and purposeful because it's provoking emotion, but it's sabotaging everything we're doing. And we just don't want that to happen. We want to strive for greater versatility and resilience. And remember, greater versatility is our ability to, the consistency in which we're able to adapt our behavior and communication to situations and interactions. And being more resilient is navigating challenges and adversity and stressful situations in a more productive, healthier manner so that we come out healthier than kind of being taken out about it. Now, Tracom Group has different resources to help teams and individuals and organizations be more versatile. We have social style. We have our adaptive mindset for resilience program that focuses on resilience skills, and paired together, they're a powerhouse in supporting your teams personally and professionally. So what can we do to be more versatile and resilient? Learn more about your 90%. I heard a comment that I heard a phrase that said, research is me search. Research is me search. Learn about yourself. Get to know your good, bad, and ugly. And this isn't challenging you to obsess about it so it distracts you from things. Maximize your strengths, manage your weaknesses that need managed. But we're not going to do that if we just let our 90% run the show and fly by the seat of our pants. We have to get to know ourselves. Learn about your relationship with stress. Whatever your passion, your purpose, your goals and objectives are, stress is going to be the thing that takes you out. It's going to be the thing that slows you down and sabotages you. And when we're stressed, we're going to feel like we're being productive because we have these feelings attached to it. We want to manage it. What causes the stress? How do we react? How can we manage it? Become an objective observer with people and situations. And this is a risk for us people because we're so feelings based. We may have to learn how to be objective. So let's learn how to be objective, observe people, observe situations. And when we do that, we're going to be able to see what the needs are and meet them where they are more appropriately. Add value. Maximize their strengths while adding value to situations and relationships to meet the needs. This is beautiful when we figure this out. Like it changes the game. It changes the trajectory of our relationships, our success, and personally and professionally with this. And prioritize progress, not perfection. It's not about being perfect. It's about making effort. It's about wanting to be better. And a little effort goes a long way. I also saw this meme I thought was really impactful. It's not about missing the target. It's about trying to get the target. And if you don't try, then you can't expect things to be different. There's a lot of things we can do to do that. At Tricon Group, we are here to support your development in these areas. We are a social intelligence company that's been in business for 60 years. We have 4 key programs under the social intelligence umbrella: social style for communication, adaptive mindset for resiliency, personal agility for innovation, and behavioral EQ for emotional intelligence. All of these programs help us learn more about our 90% and be more effective interacting and working with the people around us. And if you are interested in learning more, we have quite a few opportunities to engage. You can sign up for a program showcase, which is facilitated by Dan or myself, where we're going to give you a high level on how to utilize our programs effectively within your organization. We have a handful of e-learning courses that you can buy online and take at your own pace to learn more about your versatility and resilience. We offer public sessions that if you want to join a class by a live facilitator, you can do that and get the benefits of training. You can hire us to come in and facilitate, work with your teams and your organization, or you can get people certified internally. Dan, any final thoughts?
I don't know what else I could add, Jason. I learned a lot. Thank you.
All right, we'll stick around if you have any comments or questions. As always, we are a resource for you. You can go to our website and complete a form to talk to us. I will share my email address in the chat here. And if you are a current client of Traycom's, reach out to your account manager. Thanks, everyone.
Can stop the recording, Jason.
Right.